letting go and receiving. So we're gonna start by kneeling and scooping up from the earth. Like I'm carrying, lifting something unreal, something that delights me. And then I'm gonna turn my hands out and I'm offering it to the world. And we're gonna do a few rounds of this. So scooping up my delight, my gratitude from this morning, from my session with Sean, and offering that same feeling to the whole world. So let's do 2 more rounds of this. Scooping up and offering and giving to the whole world. And then we're going to do the opposite. So we're going to take in and I'm going to pull it down into me and offering it into the earth. I'm going to do a few rounds of receiving. So I'm returning the energetic nutrients to both sources. So taking 2 more rounds like this. And then coming back, placing, you can try, when you put one hand over the other, try putting the opposite hand. Notice how it feels. And then just see which hand feels more connected for you. Something will feel more true for you. And then noticing how the body is breathing. So the hands are moving very subtly. So just noticing that my body's alive. In this moment, this body's breathing. And before we sit down, I just want to share one thing. A few things in one thing. It's called the vagus nerve soothing massage. And this is really great for, I've used it when I've been really activated and bordering on that place of panic in my life, and I've used this with other people that to help regulate your nervous system. So it starts by finding your ears, giving yourself a little ear massage. So you can pull gently, just giving your ears a little love. We don't often pay attention to our ears. And then we're going to take our hands and put our hands over our eyes. So letting our eyes be bathed in this darkness. About 3 breaths. Just letting my eyes rest. And then moving hands down to jaw. So, and I'm going to let my head be fully supported by my hands. So just letting this heavy head be caught right here. Letting my head rest. And then I'm going to put a hand over a hand on my heart. And I'd like you to switch to make sure the one that's next to your heart feels the most at home. I'm taking a few breaths. And I can feel the beating of my heart here. Just giving my heart some reassurance that I'm here for this heart. And then hands on the belly, they can either be one on top of one or one over one. So whichever way feels more supportive. I'm just putting a little bit of gentle pressure. So the stomach contains neural cells, the same cells that are in our brain. It gives us a lot of information, letting the stomach know we're here. And then opening your hands. So releasing whatever I'd like to release in this moment, and in the space that's created, bringing in support. What support would I love? It could be my ancestors, their strength, their wisdom. It could be my own accompaniment in this moment. And then opening your eyes if you've been closed. And I could do that for a really long time, but we need to actually do this other thing. This other thing that we've agreed to do. Some of us agreed to do. And I'm just going to see how this is not working. What is this? It was working.
Is it okay with the three of you that you're in the shot? Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
And how do I keep this on? Is there a way to...
So I did plug it in for you. Does
Oh,
that give you power, this input?
no. It's a full battery.
Okay. Well,
It just,
if
it
you
sleeps.
have a moment while you do something else, I can
Okay.
change the sleep setting,
Yeah.
but otherwise I don't know another solution. Maybe you want.
Mhm.
Oh, I get this sleep settings.
Okay,
Okay.
could you do the sleep settings? Because I'm not familiar with the PC as well.
Do you want this full screen?
I do want it. If they can't, it's a weird size. So today I'm gonna talk to you about shame. Shame. So, and first, for anyone who's new, who wasn't here this morning, my name's Celia Landman. I am a student of Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh, and that informs a lot of my the things I share, because I had some I have been very fortunate to have a lot of wisdom shared with me. Everything I tell you is something that I am transmitting what has come to me. And the NVC tradition, the teachings of Marshall Rosenberg. So for me, those two really blend beautifully, and one enriches the other. So I'm going to start by talking about something that we talk about in Buddhism. Thank you so much for that. Is something called non-duality. So non-duality, is this a new word for anybody? A few people. Okay, wonderful. So non-duality is this way of thinking about things where things we usually in our language delineate as two things are actually not separate at all. So day and night. And Thich Nhat Hanh would tell this story. He would say, you know, in the beginning, in the creation of the world, God would say, the world is covered in darkness, and God would say, let there be light. And darkness would say, well, if I'm here, light's already here. That day is already here if night's already here. So we, but the way we perceive is that we have day, and then we have night. But if we only had one thing, if it was sunny all the time, we would never have something called night. There would be no day and night, because we wouldn't call anything, there would be nothing to balance it against. So he also would give this example of politically, you are on the right, and you wish for politically those on the left to be gone, you will be gone also. So he said, be very careful, because if the right goes away, the left will go away. Because this will become, your right will become your left. It's like saying, I only want a palm. I only want the palm of my hand. The palm of my hand comes with the back of my hand. And we talk about having a palm of a hand, but in truth, I mean, where's the line that separates? This is not two different things. I can't have the front of a paper without having the back side. I can't have, so we can apply this in our lives. And I love doing this sort of as an exercise, because we have all these pairs in Buddhism that we talk about that are interconnected. So, you know, it's kind of like, life is suffering. That's what you hear in interpretation of the First Noble Truth. But what it actually is suffering is in life. So if we have suffering, there's always the end of suffering, because it's never one thing. So the end of suffering, what's that? Joy. What else is the end of suffering? Peace. Maybe wellness. It's all those things. So non-duality means, so this is this big picture idea that non-duality means that what I see as affliction and pain is actually part of something. It can't exist without something else. So, and I've spent a lot of time really thinking about shame. This has been my year of shame. I have a theme for every year. And this year I was like, I'm ready, shame. I am walking, and so I wrote myself a note, and it's on my desk, and it says, hold the hand of shame. Do not leave her in the dirt. Because when I grew up in a house where shame was the currency of discipline, shame was the motivator. Shame is a hugely powerful motivator. And I learned from a very early age to get as far, that's not me, that's not me, that's not me. So shame had a lot of power in my life. And now I have a different relationship, because I have, it's still so powerful, but there's curiosity in me. There's a different understanding of what it is. So the way I think about shame is that since shame can't exist without something, the thing that shame needs to support shame is it needs relationship. So human beings are not born into feeling shame, right? We feel certain things that are innate, survival things. We feel fear, we feel hunger, we feel, we can feel happy. Shame is not a thing that we come out of the womb equipped to feel. Shame is a conditioned feeling. So it's a feeling and it's conditioning. So shame needs relationship. Shame is only felt in relationship. So I can do the exact same thing. I think I was talking to Maria about, we were having a big shame powwow yesterday. I can do the same thing in private, and maybe I'll laugh, and maybe I'll feel a little like, that was stupid, or embarrassed, or I'll feel something, but I won't feel shame, right? So shame is very specific to my belonging. So that's something I want you to remember. And is there anyone who has a different sense about this, or would like to add something?
Can I?
Yeah, please.
I was just sharing, there's a trainer from a different modality called internal family systems, but just real quick, he talks about shame being a fear of moral judgment.
Mhm.
And so that was just another
Yeah.
piece.
And what does moral judgment give us? What happens in moral judgment?
Some conditioning, like am I acting correctly? Am I not acting correctly? Am I belonging or not? Is that kind of where you're going?
What's the fear if I receive a moral judgment?
Rejection, not belonging,
I don't
not
belong.
being accepted. Yeah.
I'm out of this circle of love and connection. So it's not different than. Shame always looks through someone else's eyes. Moral judgment is not what we call a value judgment. A value judgment, how does this contribute to my life? Moral judgment is that unconscious agreement. We all do this. Good person, bad person. This is compassionate act, selfish act, right? So when we start to work in the world of values, we're in all these different relationships, these different relational circles. So the fear of exclusion because of something we said, didn't say. I love shame of didn't say. I didn't stand up for you, and I didn't say, right? Or even our being. If I'm born into a female body and I decide, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be this. I don't want to be this seen as female. To step out of these accepted stratifications, we touch shame. And not only, I might not be touching shame, I might be touching liberation. It can stimulate the shame all around me. Because if I were to do that, if I were to step out and do something like that, so not only can our actions stimulate our own shame, they can stimulate other people's shame that comes out as a judgment or a criticism. So shame it's weirdly contagious, but at the same time, one of the things we're going to talk about more is accompaniment. How do we, so what do we do with this? Because shame exists, and the reason it is so powerful is it's a cultural experience of belonging and safety and cohesion. So we have an in-group, right? Who are we in this group with? And these are some of the places where we have agreements about, I'm in groups with my family, right? So we have belonging in families, we have belongings in nationality, we have belongings in gender, we have belongings in partnerships. All the places where I belong are opportunities to experience shame. And one trainer I really like who works a lot with shame her name's Liv Larson, and she says shame exists when I believe I haven't met the needs of somebody else. So a really benign example of this was I had she was like my surrogate mom. I was really close to her, and she had a lot of medical issues. So I was doing her a favor, right? And driving her to her doctor. So, and I had another mutual friend with us, and I said, Judith, how long will this take? An hour. Okay, I drop her, we go out, we have some fun, we do stuff, and I come back in an hour, and she's sitting outside, and I said, what happened? How long have you been here? And she said, I've been here 50 minutes. And I was aware of the shame and my judgment that I was not. That wasn't healthy. I'm not a good friend. I'm not dependent. And yeah, and I just had this wash of this shame, right? So one of the things that we notice in shame is what it feels like. One of the first ways to be with shame. And just taking a moment, I mean, is there anyone here, and I would love to hear if you are someone who's never felt shame. That would be really interesting to get a view into how you felt it. But if you think of something where you have felt it, what happens in the body when you feel shame?
Like an internal cringe.
Internal cringe, yeah. Anybody
Cortisol
else?
hit.
Say it again?
A hit of cortisol rushes.
And what does that feel like for you?
Anxiety.
I get that. Anxiety, yeah. So we get like a little jittery too in that?
Despair.
Despair. Yeah.
Self-loathing.
Yeah, and our brains do that whole thing. I'm really crappy at this, and yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. But what happens in your body? What does your body do?
Hot.
Hot?
I feel tight and small.
Tight and small. Constriction?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Clenched fist.
Clenched fist.
Jaw.
Do you notice anything about your eyes?
Close?
Do they?
Turned down.
Close, turn down? Yeah. One of the classical shame, like it's, I don't even know where it comes from to me, but it's this, shame. That I do not want to be seen as this. Because what happened in shame, and it's so quick, is I've just put myself in someone else's place. I have come up way short. I do not want you to see me like this. So shame can't exist unless I believe I have transgressed or not, or in NVC language, not met the needs of someone else. And it's some group that I care about on some level, or some group that there will be consequence or some punishment if I am not seen in this group. I just want to get a sense of how that's landing with people, if that sounds like something that could be true, could be accurate.
I think it mostly makes sense to me. I'm curious how guilt plays into that and where it can exist versus not with shame.
Yeah. So for me, guilt is more the internal. Guilt is when I look with my own eyes because I did not meet my own needs for integrity, for my friend. So I felt guilty that I wanted to be reliable. I wanted ease for her, right? The shame happens when I go, I am this, I am this bad sort of person for her. My help is not help, right? When I step into seeing myself, it's almost like this strangely enough, it's like an out-of-body experience. It's an assessment of me. It's not about what my value is. My value is, I want to be dependable. I want to support you. I don't want you waiting outside for 50 minutes. Yeah, because I don't think you want that. I mean, if she was waiting outside going, oh, it's so nice to be outside, but she was not. There was a little, but yeah, there was a little, where were you, my ride? Right? So we're very sensitive as beings to how much welcome and how much belonging is there.
Something I've heard is shame is an assessment of my intrinsic nature versus a behavior I did, because a behavior I could change, and that's guilt is like, oh,
Yeah.
I lied, but I can tell the future tell the truth in the future. But shame is like, I am a liar,
Right.
and I cannot change that about myself.
So for me, and I know that's Brene Brown, I know she's very big on I am bad versus I did something. For me, the NVC way of holding it resonates more in terms of not meeting somebody else's needs. Because I've recognized in my own shame, it's not, I don't feel like I'm bad all the time. I'm particularly bad in this moment, right? So for me, but yes, that is one way to hold it, and that's been a very popular, it's gotten a lot of press, yeah.
It's sounding to me like maybe shame's not always bad. It's not always something we want to avoid.
Lisa, why yes, yeah, so shame, so when we start to, instead of, backing away from shame, when I move forward, when I see shame, and I get curious, and I can get a little curious. So for me, what really helps is understanding what shame actually is. That shame is a way of creating cohesion in a community, cohesion in a family, cohesion in any sort of organization. We have something called beneficial regret in Buddhism. Yeah, you were gonna say?
I experience shame when I don't meet a standard that I feel is set.
And who sets the standard?
It could be my perception of the standard, or something, but it's like if I'm not measuring up to what I think I should.
And I'm gonna guess that you were not the first person who ever set that standard in the world. You know what I mean? Can you give us an
It's not always
example?
related to somebody else, it's more to maybe the cultural standard or my, the standard of my, work.
Mhm.
What is necessary to meet the standard of my work, or
Right.
something.
And who's gonna see your work?
The
Somebody-
accrediting agency.
Yeah.
Or the, yeah.
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
And so, and
It gets
culturally,
evaluated.
right, so it doesn't have to be a person we know, it's gonna be,
Right.
but in our, American world, if that is where I'm dwelling and taking taking belonging, if I'm accepting belonging as an American, and what could I do? Yeah, and I do, and I don't vote. What if I just don't vote? And then, if my neighbor goes, oh my God, you didn't even vote, did you? So, yeah, I could see that stimulating shame, huge shame, because I didn't do what our cultural expectation was. So it doesn't have to be like,
Direct to a person.
Yeah.
You know. Okay.
right, but it's a construct of behavior, which is kind of a long way to say but it's something we do to be part of, right? So if I wanna be, I'm in a Buddhist order, if I, start, having, lots of, affairs, sexual affairs, I am really stepping outside of our guidelines, and I can imagine the huge shame if people were like, hey there, what's going on this? Because that's something I care about, right?
So even if it's not pointed out to me and I think I'm
Yeah.
not meeting the standard, like I'll have shame. It
Yes.
doesn't have to come from someone's, saying, hey, you didn't do this.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I'll just.
So it's that internalized shame
Yeah.
too. So that's a wonderful point, that we do internalize all of these messages of belonging and safety around belonging. And we can have these, what we call beneficial regret too, is where I know I did something. I know I stepped out of line, and I feel something, right? And I feel that guilt, and I may feel shame. And then what's the message? So it's looking like, what's the message of the shame? What is actually the beneficial message that's in my shame? So what I wanted to start, and actually, I'm thinking, how much time do we have, Lisa? When do we end? Does anyone know? Nobody knows.
It's not 3:15? I think it's 3:15 we
It
end.
could be 3:15. Okay, so we have a lot, we have a good amount of time. I'd just like you to take a moment and really think about that. What can you imagine, right? In shame, what would be a benefit? What would be the positive thing that would come from the experience of shame?
Maybe it's like an internal motivator to behave ethically, like to your point, even when no one's watching.
Even when no one's watching, yeah.
Like,
Safety. To stay in the group or
Yeah.
something.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like when it comes up for me recently, I kind of treat it like, oh, there's this fragmented part of myself that I've been walling myself off from, and like you said, the moving towards it and getting curious allows me access to this part of myself that might be self-ostracized, but at least like I'm getting bits of myself back by exploring what's in there that might just be like, there is no reason to have current shame around it.
Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else know any other, what could be a beneficial aspect of shame? Because we all feel, this is a universal feeling plus conditioning.
It might inspire us to do better, to be more and to be more present and.
So one of the things I do now is when I feel shame is see it and to actually recognize, oh, you really want to keep me safe. You really want me to stay in a place of belovedness, of belonging. Oh. And man, does it get my attention now, right? So it's a very powerful emotion that is always wanting us. It's like this arm that just sweeps out and says, pay attention. There's something that you care about here. There's something dear to you. That's why we feel shame. So that's the beneficial side. It can get a little sticky though when we are walking around and we feel shame without even realizing where it's coming from and what we've kind of been we've gotten co-opted into groups we don't know that we're in. We've signed, the cards without our consent because we're all in these the systems that exist in the world. So does everyone have some paper? This is something I want to do some journaling about. Asking some questions. Does anyone need? There's some notebooks I think over there and some pens.
Yep, the notebooks are free, and there's the thingy you put your paper on. What's that called? Clipboards.
Eric had printed out some pages. Do you know where those are living?
Try back there.
Oh, can I squeeze over just to? Yeah. Just want to read the notes. Look at the board. And I can give you a printout of this after. All right, so this is a two-part thing, exercise. So I'd like you just to,
Do you want the printouts now?
no, because we have this, but we'll go in at the end, you can have them as reference. So cultural shame messages from, these are big picture, right? These are the culture that we're swimming in. So these can be, and I've listed a lot of the common places where we can feel shame. And there can be things on there that aren't listed. And I'd just like you to write down some messages of cultural shame that you have received in your life. So these, I'll just read so you can get an idea too. Sexuality, mental health, employment, age, family, gender, race, ability, physical health, your class, your education. And money, which isn't on there, but that's one that we can feel shame about.
That's in class, isn't it?
It's in class, but class can also, it can be its own thing too. So anything that, and you will not be sharing these, so these are just for you to really notice what's the conditioning been. There's also shaming around size, body size, shaming appearance. So about 1 more minute for our cultural messages. Some of the burdens that we've received. And then considering messages of shame from family expectations, or even generational shame. I come from a family that, my grandparents, well, my grandfather was born in Belarus back in a Jewish ghetto. And, even when he was in the United States, he called himself Michael, so people would not know he was a Jew. So we can so that's not, it's not exactly my shame, but yeah. But there's generational shame that comes to us.
Could you read the categories again?
Oh, categories, sure. So some of the common categories: sexuality, mental health, employment, age, ability, family, gender, race, health, class, education. We can add religion. And families may assign us a role in that family that we didn't know we qualified for. I did not apply for this job, but we may have that job. Right? We may have been the little mommy or the parent of the parent. We may have been the supporter or I had one person I knew whose actual nickname was Buffer. That was their job between their parents. They called their child Buffer. That's a little expectation, yeah. So, thinking just about what happened in my family. What are the shoes I'm walking in? And we'll have about 1 more minute with this part. And we may be the caregivers in our families. The person who got that job. And then the last messages I'd like you to consider today are messages from peers, friends, partners. So these are, what kind of messages have we received? Messages that elicited shame for us.
Peers and partners?
Peers, partners, friends. And you'll get a handout of these so you don't have to write everything down.
I worked at a place where someone told me, stay in your lane. Yeah. Feelings happen. Yeah.
Doesn't actually feel that easy to identify them, because it's like the water.
Water settled a little.
No, it's like the water I swim in. It's just like,
Oh.
I don't know. I guess I can tell you the moments I feel bad, and there's probably something in there.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to tell me? Not, you don't have to tell me. But yeah.
Just acknowledging that this isn't, it's okay if you can't come up with a lot of stuff right now.
And we might have also felt it so many times, tell me if this sounds accurate, that it's almost like a space, like there's some numbness when you receive messages. Is that?
Yeah, or even maybe an area you don't go anymore, like
Yeah.
emotional, you don't go there anymore, you don't talk about that topic because
It's gonna bring, yeah, I'm gonna feel something, yeah. So the places you avoid are definitely trailheads, right? Where angels fear to tread is an old-timey expression. So maybe a minute more for this, or people, is there anyone who needs a minute? Minute more? Okay. There are ample opportunities from all places of belonging to experience these messages of shame. And something I've been really aware of, someone else's disappointment can trigger huge shame for me. Because I'm like, you're disappointed. So it's not, I don't even let them feel disappointment because somehow I'm responsible. I didn't meet a need for them. So just to broaden your perspective, that this, how much shame can move us around in our lives, how much it can, there's a push and a pull around this belonging and shame. So some things I'd like you to think about too is the age you were when you first heard these messages. So you can make a note if you want, or just notice, how old was I when I first started hearing? Maybe I heard things from my parents first. Maybe I heard things from the culture. We don't know, when you're little, you don't understand this is cultural, but now we can have some perspective.
so that's where the people pleaser is born.
Yeah. That if you're not happy, I did something, or I didn't.
I'm not gonna let me feel shame, so I'm just gonna do everything you need the way you need it, whether it's good or bad for me.
Yeah.
Cause
Yeah.
I'm not gonna feel shame.
I'm not gonna. And when we're little, this is such, it's such a powerful feeling. And also, these other questions, are you alone? If you're alone feeling shame, yeah, then it's really, it's so strong and powerful. An antidote, or what we're gonna do next is we're gonna practice accompanying that little being who is always us, who feels this and is alone in it. because that's where shame grows, is when we're alone in it. And I want to say a little more about that kind of people pleasing. Something about children and development is that for many of us, and actually this trainer Liv Larson shares, she said, if you want to feel shame, ask for something. Just start asking for things. When we are small people, if we don't receive what we need, what we're longing for, what feels like care and support, the way a child's mind works is something's always wrong with me. If I were better, if I were more, if I were less, if I took up less space, if I needed less, if I were less of a burden, if I were more helpful, I would get that love the way I want it. I would get that attention. There'd be more mommy, daddy, whomever. There'd be more, and it would be enough. Children always sacrifice themselves. I get a little teary when I say that, but because it is safer to believe in a child's mind that we're lacking, that we're deficient, that we need to work harder, than it is to believe that somebody is not able to care for us, that somebody is not competent. Because for a child, that is terrifying. That I would much rather believe I am the problem instead of you, because that's my survival. So shame is so when I ask for something, when I ask you to hold my hand or to sit next to me, I can feel tremendous shame, because if I were enough, you would already do it. If I were lovable just as I am, I wouldn't need to ask you. So this work that we do in NVC, and I don't even like to call it work, this accompanying ourselves can be so deep, because we see all the ways that we've kept ourselves in a place of being unlovable. So stepping into this willingness to see ourselves differently, to see ourselves as worthy of love. Does that sound accurate? Yeah. And I speak from experience. So yes, I have been there. I have lived in that house. So all these messages, we've received all of these, and we've also, in parts of us, we have internalized and we believe. We can believe all these things. So the good news is, there's somebody who's always here, and it's called me. I am always here for myself. And so the accompaniment starts when I am willing to step into my own shame and give myself the belonging that I am so afraid I will lose. To give myself the deepest, most reliable and secure belonging that I can offer to myself. And I've lived a few years, I've done a few things. This is the most reliable way I have found of coming back to myself in shame, of being able to act, of getting out of being frozen. So I want to switch our, let's see if I can do this. How do I get out of this thing now? Help me, Matt.
Can you hit the escape key?
Thank you. Let's see. happening to mine? Let's see if this works. Same one, no. I have a real need for competence, which isn't being met.
Here, I can make it full screen.
Okay, thank you. So this is really an exercise that we can do with ourselves. So I'd like to actually do this as a meditation for us, if that's okay for people. So I'm going to be guiding you through some of these questions. And this is sort of like my number 7 in the center. Those are the words I use for me. Those do not have to be the words you will be using for you. So when we get to that part of the meditation, I'm going to use those words, but I invite you to consider what words are going to be the way that you are including yourself as your beloved. So I'm just going to invite you to sit back.
Is it okay if I record the meditation part?
Sure, I think we're recording the whole thing, right?
It's okay with me if you wanted to have that copy yet.
But you can do it on your own if you'd like, sure. And I like to use a bell. Is the bell okay for everybody? All right. Yeah, so I'm just going to invite you to take a pause, because this is very deep stuff. This can stimulate a lot of sensation in us. And letting, just inviting the body to do a little less. So a little less holding, a little less tensing. Just giving yourself permission to be held right here and now. And I'm going to invite 3 sounds of the bell. And you'll hear a little wake up sound just to let the bell know. And as the sound of the bell fades, experiencing that contact with the floor, with your feet. Noticing how the body is touching clothing, contact with skin, even the contact of the air with our cheeks. And noticing the movement in the body. So the way the body is breathing on its own, just allowing that rise and that fall to be there with you, that accompaniment of breath. So this breath is always here for me. It's like the ocean waves, even when I don't see them, it's here. It's like this friend who waits for me. And then bringing to mind these messages that you've recalled, these messages from your past that are still alive in this moment. These places of shame, of perhaps of disappointment or judgment. Just allowing them to come into your awareness, and also noticing your presence that you are here, holding, making space to hear. And noticing, what does it feel like in my body when I hear these messages? Notice if there's heat, contraction. Is there tension? Just whatever arises. Noticing the area of the body where you feel this. And almost like these sensations are a small child, just inviting them to breathe with you. So teaching these areas of shame in the body to breathe. Come sit with me and breathe with me. This clench in my jaw. Let me just breathe. Let me show you how we can breathe together. Almost as if you were touching a wounded bird, this really gentle, gentle touch. And feeling that breath moving. Breathing with whatever is here. That this too, I won't leave you alone. I'm here breathing with you. And then putting a name to these sensations as a feeling word, an emotion. So what would be the word? Maybe hurt, pain, sadness, whatever it is. Might be relief. So what emotions are here in this body, in this breathing body? And noticing, can my heart be open to these feelings, whatever they are? So is my heart open to this pain or to this loss, to this feeling of steadiness even? Can I make space in my own heart for my experience of shame? Opening my own capacity for care, my capacity for welcome. Can I give that to these feelings? That even in this, I open my heart even to this part of my life. And checking in with these feelings, what would these feelings have liked to have happened? These messages of shame, what would they have liked instead? And putting these longings into the language of needs, what would be the needs that my heart is longing for? Would I have loved to have acceptance or understanding, freedom, whatever my heart tells me. With nothing being wrong or bad, simply not even considering what would have been possible. Whatever I wanted, whatever I longed for. So letting myself love what I love. Letting myself want what I wanted and needed. And offering these needs to myself in the way that I wanted to hear them. So how would this tender heart love to hear these messages? And offering to my own self, I am here for you. I accept you. I am glad you were born. You are not a burden to me. I understand you. You belong to me. That caring for you is a privilege, my own self. Caring for you is a joy. Offering again. I am here for you. I accept you exactly as you are. I see you as lovable. You are easy to love. I am so glad you were born. You are not a burden in my life. I understand you. You belong to me. We belong to each other. So I am here for you always. You are mine. I love and care for you, even in the midst of this. I see your beauty. I see your light. Caring for you is a privilege in my life, and I am so glad you were born.
And as the sound of the small bell fades, starting to really, with a lot of slowness and tenderness, bringing awareness back to your body, back to being here in connection and community. You can start by moving your fingers and your toes if you've been lying down. You like to stretch a little or a lot. Just feeling the whole length of the body here. Just taking a moment. And would people enjoy a small break, and then we'll come back and and work in dyads. So let's take at least about a 5-minute break. So you can just gather yourself.